Hi YouTube world, welcome back to my channel. So today's video is going to be a little bit different. This is my first time making more of a blog type of video. So the reason for this is because I often have a lot of friends and students asking me for recommendations for yoga books, how to get them started in their practice, what kind of books that can support their practice if they're just starting out on their journey, specifically in Ashtanga Yoga. So I decided to make this video and recommend my top 3 books that have helped me on my journey. All right, so the first book that I have to share with you today is this one. Okay, so this is by Kino McGregor and it's called The Power of Ashtanga Yoga. This is actually the first book that I ever picked up and read about Ashtanga Yoga. Before I read her book, I was practicing a bit of Ashtanga Yoga at the studio, going in, doing the sequence, and leaving. So all that I really knew about the practice was that we were doing a set sequence, that the breath was important. You know, these are just the things that the teacher would talk about in the class. I did not know the history, the background, the philosophy, and all the other magic that is really happening in the Ashtanga Yoga practice until I picked up this book. I just happened to stumble upon it at the library. Saw it, I decided to check it out, took it home, and immediately I was like, I need my own copy. There's a lot of good stuff in here. So I returned the book to the library, ordered one on Amazon, and I actually will include a link below to all of the books I'm recommending today. So you can take a look later and see if you want to get one yourself. Okay, so back to this book. What I love about it, okay, she starts the book off not by talking about the physical postures, but she talks a bit about the background, right? She talks about how she ended up doing this practice, how she went on her journey to India, to Mysore, the source of this practice, to study with Pattabhi Jois, her teacher. And then she talks about a lot of the theory, the history, the tradition. And I actually thought it was really interesting because these are the kind of things that you're not going to hear about when you go to a studio to do a practice, right? The teacher usually doesn't have time to talk about these things. So I love that having this book allowed me to dig deeper into the background. And she also talks a lot about how the practice has influenced her daily life. And something that really resonated with me, I would like to share with you. Just one, I found it, one little passage here. This is the part of the book where she's talking about the breath, the importance of the breath in the practice. So she says, when things are difficult, fearful, painful, and frustrating, we all have the natural tendency to hold our breath. But if you stop breathing, you stop your life energy. It is important to keep breathing, especially when the poses test your physical and emotional limits. Ashtanga Yoga tells you to breathe, literally, right into the pain, anxiety, sadness, or anything else that comes up. One of the main manifestations of proficiency in a series of poses is not merely the ability to get the form right, but the ability to breathe deeply and steadily while holding them. When you learn to breathe freely while attempting difficult asanas, you are also practicing the kind of deep relaxation that will help you in difficult life situations. Isn't that true? So if you are a practitioner, if you're consistent in your practice, eventually I think this will really, really resonate. I know it has for me. And when I read it, I was just like, yes. What a gem. Okay. Anyway, so after she talks more about the background of the practice, she even talks about the Ashtanga Yoga diet, which I thought was quite interesting to read as well. Okay, so then after about 1/3 into the book, she moves on to the actual physical practice, starting with the sun salutation, Surya Namaskara. And she goes all the way through the entire primary series. And what I like about it is that every single posture that is in the sequence, she gives so many details. She will dedicate pages, a few pages per pose, talking about how to enter the positions, talks about the benefits, and also offers variations, different variations that you can take because everyone's body moves and folds differently. And she, yeah, acknowledges that. So really good stuff. I highly recommend this book to support you in your practice. Of course, if you have a teacher in your neighborhood that teaches Ashtanga Yoga, I always think that it's better to learn from a teacher and just use a book as a resource, right, as a support. Okay, so that's The Power of Ashtanga Yoga by Kino McGregor. All right, so next up is this book called Ashtanga Yoga, the Practice Manual by David Swenson. So I love this book. One reason is because I find it to be quite, what's the right word, like historical. When David made this book, it was quite a while ago. I can't remember the exact year, but I don't know, it's in here somewhere. But you can definitely tell it's a bit older. And I love that he includes these old photos of when he first traveled to India. So you really feel like you're kind of on this journey with him from back in the days. So David is a really inspiring teacher. I've had the privilege to train with him in a few different places in Hong Kong, Shanghai, and also in Paris right before COVID hit. So I'm really grateful that I had the opportunity to do that. And every time that I'm training with him, practicing with him, I'm always re-inspired by the things that he has to say, because not only is he a great teacher of the poses, but he is also really, really great at being an example of what it means to live life as a yogi that is actually, making sense for us. He says yogi is not somebody who's just going to close yourself in a cave and hide forever and just be away from society, right? He encourages us to use our practice, right? Take what we learn from our practice and then share that, whether it's teaching yoga or just by being a good person, right? By sharing that good vibe. You bring your energy into a room and that affects everyone else. It's contagious, right? And he's always reminding us of that, which I love, because he is a living example of someone who's doing just that. Okay, so other things that I love about the book is that he offers a lot of variations for different postures. I just randomly flipped to one, but you can see for every pose, he'll have another page where he makes it very simple. Here's option A, B, C, D, and E. So the way that it's laid out, you can kind of just look and then pick, okay, that's the one that's going to work for my body, so that's the variation I'm going to take today. And I really like that about this book. The other thing about this book is that he actually includes primary and secondary series, whereas Kino's book, this one only has primary series, but she does have another one that is The Power of Ashtanga 2, and that book is all about the intermediate series or second series that we call it. Okay. But in this book from David Swenson, he includes both series in it. Something to note though is that when he created this book, the sequence was a little bit different, but they're just really, really, really minor details. For example, right now when we do our practice in the second series, there's a pose called Pinchamayurasana, the forearm stand. So the pose after that is Karandavasana, which is when you're in a forearm stand and then you fold your legs into lotus and then you lift back up. Okay, and then after that, there's no more forearm standing. However, when David created this book, okay, the sequence was a little bit different. They did Karandavasana, but then after that, they have another one, Scorpion. Okay, so in the current sequence that we practice nowadays in yogashalas, we're not doing this posture, at least not in the second series. So those are just some things to note if you're using this book as a support for your practice. Okay, and then yeah, I think that's all I've got to say about David's book. Yeah, really nice, really good stuff. And he actually, I can see him using a strap here, which I don't know, I feel like a lot of Ashtanga yoga teachers that I meet these days don't offer that. No straps, no blocks. Okay, that's David's book. All right, last but not least, Yoga Mala by Patabi Joyce. Okay, so this book, Yoga Mala, is much smaller, much thinner than the rest of them, but it's also quite special because it is written by Patabi Joyce himself. So I wouldn't say that he is the creator of Ashtanga Yoga, because he says that he learned this from his teacher, who learned it from his teacher, and so on and so on. But I would give him credit for popularizing Ashtanga Yoga and for teaching Ashtanga Yoga to non-Indian people. And because of that, people like me and you are able to learn this practice today, right? So he opened his door to anyone who wanted to learn from him, as long as they paid a fee, I guess. And yeah, because he was doing that, and actually, David, he was one of the earlier Westerners to travel to Mysore, India, to practice and learn Ashtanga from Pattabhi Jois. And then he went back to America and shared this practice with so many people, along with other Westerners who also did the same. Yeah? Okay, so I would give him credit for popularizing Ashtanga Yoga. Okay, so this is also a really great book where he starts off talking more about the philosophical aspects of yoga, talking about the 8 limbs, which actually all the books do. They all start off talking about the philosophical aspects, the tradition, the background, which just shows you that, you know, in all these teachings, the poses are really kind of secondary, yeah? All right, so there's another little bit that I want to read to you from this book. Okay, so here we go. This is what Pattabhi Jois says. By the strength gained through this practice, we can come to know the method for bringing the mind and sense organs under control. Thus, we can achieve yoga. For it is only through the control of the mind and sense organs that we come to know our true nature, and not through intellectual knowledge or by putting on the garb of a yogi. All right, so I thought that was, yeah, really special. Rings true for me, for sure. All right, so after maybe a third or halfway into the book, we come into the postures, starting with Tadasana, starting with Samastiti, Surya Namaskara. He goes through the postures one by one, talking about the method of doing the posture, the benefits, okay, how the breath matches the counting, right? So on the second breath, you do a specific movement. On the third breath, you do another movement. We call this the vinyasa. Another thing to note, though, that when this book was created, similar to what I said about David's book, was that the sequence was a little bit different. Now the sequence has changed, but in very, very minor ways. So one example is that when we do this posture called Trikonasana or triangle, when we do it today, usually right after, we do the twisting version of the pose, right? But back then, they did not. They would do the posture, Trikonasana, change sides, and that was it for Trikonasana, and you do the next posture. Okay, so the next posture would be Parshvakonasana, the side angle pose. So same thing, nowadays when we do this pose, right after, we do the twisting version of it, but back then they did not. They went right into Prasarita Paratanasana, okay? So just some things to note if you're following this, if you're following along with this book as your practice manual, okay? So that is Yoga Mala, special book to have. Okay, this one, unfortunately, I'll never be able to have signed because Pattabhi Jois is no longer with us. However, I'm just gonna nerd and geek out a bit. My David book is signed, and my Kino book is also signed. Okay. So those are the books that I have for you today. Let me know if you have any questions. If you have any recommendations for future videos, let me know. You can type it in the comments below or just send me a message. And if you are interested in any of these 3 books, I'll have links included at the bottom. Just look for it. All right, thank you for joining me today. Hope to see you next time.